Hello, everybody. My name is Mandi Ray, Agent 51 for the CIA, the Cosmic Intelligence Agency, here to give you messages from Mercury. And Mercury is the planet that rules communication and information processing and decision making. And it moves pretty fast and goes retrograde quite a bit. So I think it deserves attention to see where it's moving, what aspects it's making. And this particular Mercury transit was a good one for me to start on because it just went retrograde. It's direct now, it's out of the shadow. And so we're charging forward and we're looking at new territory. It's entering Scorpio November 5th in the evening US time. So that could be different for you depending on where you're at. I know it's like November 6th in Australia. So check your local time. And Mercury in Scorpio is quite deep. It deals with the shadow, the idea of transformation, how we share resources, what I own and what you own, and how we share that, including our bodies. It rules sexuality. It rules the taboo. That's Scorpio. Mercury was in Libra. It went retrograde, and it squared Pluto 3 times. And so in some way, we're continuing that theme on. Pluto is power dynamics, and so is Scorpio. And Pluto is the modern ruler of Scorpio. You may have heard that association. So the fact that it squared Pluto 3 times while it was in Libra retrograde and then is moving into Scorpio is significant. So we're talking about when it was in Libra, researching how we're doing relationship. Are things fair and balanced? And what or who do I allow to have authority over me, Pluto and Capricorn, and that tense nature between the two? How do we have peace if we need to empower ourselves in some way? Now that that's done, it's moving into Scorpio to dive even deeper and to see what contracts we want to make or break, because Scorpio rules contracts. Scorpio rules other people's money. Think taxes and inheritance. And again, I could say power dynamics like 8 billion times when I'm talking about Scorpio. That's at its core what it's about. Do I feel empowered or disempowered? So immediately when it moves into Scorpio, it makes a sextile with Venus and Capricorn, the very early degrees. And this is really great. This is a great way to kick off Mercury in Scorpio. Mercury in Scorpio wants to investigate and it wants to merge with people. It can get quite obsessive and possessive. And we're thinking in terms of this. Don't forget, so obsessive thoughts. That's what we're talking about, mental processes. That is a possibility. But with its initial sextile to Venus and Capricorn, we see the rules, we see the playing field, and we want success, we want longevity. And so that's exactly what Mercury is going to be investigating for. It's like for that longevity, for that success. How do we climb the mountain? How do we make a pact that works for both of us, in which we feel empowered? Now, also, pretty immediately, when it makes that opportunistic sextile, it's making a yod to the North Node in Gemini. And a yod is when something is quincunx to 2 planets in a sextile. That is an isosceles triangle. It's the long, skinny triangle. And it points to the North Node. And that fulcrum, that point, is where there's going to be a lot of energy. And it's in Gemini. That's where we've had the eclipses. So are you listening? Are you taking in new information? Are you able to change perspective? That's what it's going to take to make our closest relationships work, to make Scorpio rules business partnerships work or not work. Maybe we learn something new. Scorpio does rule secrets. And Mercury being there means people may end up telling them. Let me tell you about the next aspect that comes up that's pretty big. So that is, like I said, almost immediately, November 5th, 6th, maybe 7th, depending on where you are. And then around the 9th and 10th, we move into Mercury conjoining Mars. They're together in the sky. Now, this really puts a different spin on it. So Mercury had its initial meeting with Venus, and it's like, oh, is this what I need to do? Okay. All right. Sounds good. We want success. We want, longevity. We want to build things well and have a strong foundation. Then Mercury meets up with Mars, and Mars is like, wait a minute. We want to get our desires met. We want to be fulfilled. We want passion. And we want motivation. and we feel like going to war. Mars is the traditional ruler of Scorpio, and it really wants what it wants. So when Mercury, the messenger, the mind, meets up with the ego, the desire, the will, and they work together, it's quite powerful. So it can be good for motivation, for getting things done, for also standing in your power and saying, this is what I deserve. It could also be, if things are not exactly on solid ground, if things are out of balance, that will come up. And it can be inflammatory speech, and it can be fights and anger and flying off the handle. And so I, firmly believe that there's good and bad in all transits. There's the positive, negative, the, equal duality, the balance. And so absolutely with a Mercury Mars conjunction, we have this connotation here. So I say, if you want to, direct your ship, if you want to drive the boat somewhere, drive it to the place that is most useful for you. So if motivation is something you've been needing, this is a good transit to get passionate about something, to maybe, if you're going to obsess over something that, pays you money or is good for humanity, things of that nature. You get to direct your energies. But also, if you want to, avoid a fight, this is good to know that, things may be inflamed around this time. That being said, Scorpio is a water sign. And so we do deal with emotions, and we can be quite intuitive and psychic and pick up on undertones here. And so Mars being in this mix adds a little fire to that. And I think of definitely maybe secrets coming out. Definitely maybe. Did you hear that? I don't want to quite commit to it. But absolutely going to be interesting, I think, for sure. Let me pull up my notes here and see what we got coming up next. That exact conjunction is November 10th in the morning for US, and it's in the evening for places like Australia. So check your local time to know when that's active. I give it 2 days because it's definitely building. Okay. I think the building energy is very important. And there's, not just the Mercury Mars conjunction that we, get to have at that time. There is another piece of this puzzle, and I purposely left it off when I was describing Mercury Mars together, because that is by itself one thing. But we also have Saturn in Aquarius coming in. Actually, it's not coming in. Mercury and Mars are coming into a square with Saturn. Saturn moves slower. So Saturn is the taskmaster. It is the wall. It is the rules. It's mastery. It is, are we innovating our structures? And we have to build the future, so that it lasts and supports humanity and all of these really forward-thinking things. But Mercury and Mars just want to kind of get what they want. They want to go deep with someone, and they want to merge, and they want to be in their passion and in their ego, in their will. And Saturn may be saying, no, you have to do it a different way. Ultimately, it's an obstacle. It can feel like an obstacle, but it is for a reason. It's inviting you to the mastery that Saturn brings. And so perhaps this is really when we see a contract's not working out for us, and Saturn says you have to change it. Or a relationship's not working out, and Saturn says no more. It's not going to work. Where do you see your future self? That's what Saturn's asking you. That's not always the most fun thing, because that requires work. We have to work sometimes to get to the future. We have to have discipline. I mean, some people stumble on it, and that's a Uranus thing, and that's coming too. That was actually a good segue. But for this specific Saturn and Mercury Mars square, we also have one more visitor, and that is the moon. The moon will be with Saturn at the same time. Let me show you the chart here very quickly because I think it's an important date to have your eyes on. And we're going to share the screen here. All right, this is November 11th. Let me go back to November 10th here. And actually a little bit further back. I've got this set for my local time, by the way. This is Birmingham, Alabama, Central Time, US. So again, check your local time. And here is this square. There is Mercury, Mars, square to Moon, Saturn. That's early in the morning, November 10th, Central US. So probably be late in the evening in other places on the other side of the globe. Okay, you guys, now you see it. Now you know. We run into it on that date. I'm looking forward to getting past this. Do I dread transits? Sometimes. Do I expect them to be bad? I hope not. I don't want to. So that is why I choose to use words like mastery and innovation, and we're building a new future, because that is ultimately what Saturn is trying to do for us, right? Mercury, Mars, we've got passion and motivation. We're fired up about something. We really want to get something. Saturn and Aquarius says we have to do it a certain way. So you can expect this to be a little bit frustrating. I'm going to say it. Probably will be. Okay, the next big transit we've got coming is, by the way, it's done with that square by the 11th, 12th. So it's about 2 days again. I would look at 9th, 10th, 11th as the dates to look for here, November. Then Mercury starts to oppose Uranus, and that's the other thing I was talking about. So this is where we have freedom and where we break free and feel liberation, especially mentally. We become aware of something we weren't. So maybe not around this Mercury-Mars conjunction, but maybe in the Mercury-Uranus opposition is when the secrets come out. That is when we have upheaval that Uranus brings. Now, I will say this. Upheaval can be winning the lottery. Let's not have super negative thoughts. I think that writes reality. I want to leave it open. So look for an opportunity as well, an inspiration, but definitely going to be in the theme of how I merge my resources, what I own, what is mine. This is Uranus and Taurus, what I like, what I find comfortable, my comfort zone, which I'm breaking out of, and it's going to be brand new now. Our values are changing with Uranus and Taurus. You know, maybe green used to be our favorite color and now it's red. Mercury and Mars, opposite of Uranus, Mercury definitely is like, well, then we have to change something about the way we do relationships, about the way we share ourselves. You know, maybe our assets have changed. Maybe we've acquired assets or lost some. And then the contracts we've made have to change, have to be different. Are we empowered? Do we feel a greater sense of self-worth? That's Uranus and Taurus. That's what we need to know. So yes, we do meet Saturn first. We meet the obstacle and then we meet the freedom. And I like that. We meet the wall and then we meet the liberation. I should say, caveat, Mars still has to oppose Uranus. So this is going to last as well for a couple of days. So 13th, 14th. When does Mars oppose Uranus? That's a good 5 or 6. Oh, at the lunar eclipse, which is the next big thing. So for the week there, we're talking, what day do I want to give it? November 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, which is a Monday, 16th, 17th. Yeah, it's active. That whole time is going to be a time of change, upheaval, innovation, liberation, inspiration, and things are going to be definitely unsettled. So, you know, when you have a whole week of that, how do you prepare? What do you do? Well, you listen to something like this and you at least know it. And then you say, I'm going to allow for change, and I'm also going to drive the boat. We're in Scorpio territory. It's a fixed water sign. So we're driving the boat through the Uranian waves. Where do we want to get to? We've met Saturn. Saturn said, this is what you need for your trip. This is what you need with the Uranus opposition coming. At least that's how I choose to look at it. Saturn and Uranus have been squaring each other all year. They'll square each other one more time in December. And this activates that T-square. Even though it's not super close in orb, Saturn's at 8 degrees, Uranus is at 12 degrees. By sign, this is a big deal. So we have that whole week. And then that's also leading up to the full moon lunar eclipse on the 19th of November in the US at 27 degrees of Taurus. It's a lunar eclipse. Mercury's at 21 degrees. Oh, let me back up. Let me back up here. Mercury at the lunar eclipse is trining Neptune, and we need to talk about that. Neptune is dreams, spirituality, intuition, sometimes delusion, mysticism, sometimes illusion. With it being Mercury in Scorpio, which is very exacting and investigative, trine Neptune, you could definitely be having intuitive flashes here. Now, don't forget Mars is nearby, opposite Uranus around this same time. Okay, so, I mean, I think to myself, Richard Pryor had Mercury and Mars in Scorpio, and it was opposite by sign to Uranus and Taurus. And Richard Pryor was not afraid to confront the hard topics. Okay, so we have this Richard Pryor energy going on. And then Mercury also trines Neptune and intuition. And I know Richard Pryor had some really wonderful intuition, you know? So, I mean, that was a good example to me whenever I was looking up who had Mercury and Mars in Scorpio. Yeah, I suggest that would be a good remediation technique around this time. So Mercury trine Neptune will be great for dreams, inspiration, intuition, maybe confusion and delusion if you're not careful. It's definitely escapism. And that's the harder part of Neptune, is wanting to escape into unhealthy mechanisms like drugs and alcohol, and instead of spirit, instead of, you know, what makes us whole. So I would watch for that around this time, especially with Mars opposite Uranus. Anytime Mars opposes Uranus, and this is, we're looking at the 18th, 19th, and then the whole week before that, Mercury does, but definitely with Mars opposite Uranus, we're looking at being careful with our bodies. I always say it. Probably wouldn't go skydiving around this time. You know, like things of that nature, especially with Mercury trine Neptune. You get wrapped up into dreaminess, and then Mars opposite Uranus, you have something shocking happen. So around this time, it's probably a good idea to be aware of that. Now we get to the lunar eclipse, the 19th, and let me clear this out. Lunar eclipses are always known as fated events. This is an interesting one. I'm not going to go in too deep. The moon's in Taurus. The node exactly where the eclipse happens is in Gemini. What's really important is that Mercury is here coming into, leaving its trine with Neptune and coming into a square with Jupiter and a sextile with Pluto. So let me show you what I'm talking about. There is the sextile with Pluto. There's the square with Jupiter. This is repeating the theme that was going on when Mercury was in Libra. Mercury in Libra trined Jupiter and squared Pluto. And now the tables are turned. It's like we learned something. So at this full moon, I would expect things to come to light, this lunar eclipse, and have some fated events. With the sextile to Pluto, Pluto's working for Mercury here. And so We're seeing to the depths. We are taking back our power. Jupiter in Aquarius is expansion, and Aquarius does rule nonconformity and detached behavior to a certain extent, but also forward thinking. With it being Scorpio Aquarius, it's like what's good for my future and for the rest of humanity, and what's good for me in the moment. And that is going to be at a little bit of a tense crossroads. But Pluto and Capricorn's like, this is where you've always wanted to have authority, stand in it. And so we get that message around the lunar eclipse. And I think that's really nice. Also, it persists. It persists for quite a bit. Let's see. I do believe that's like exact on the 20th. And I'm telling you, it's at 24 degrees. Pluto's at 24 degrees. Jupiter's at 24 degrees. And Mercury's at 24 degrees. These are exact sextiles and squares to deal with. So beyond that, there's no real aspects that are packing a punch. But I do think with this sextile to Pluto, we make up our minds around the 21st. And we're like, I'm not going to take that anymore. What's done is done. Jupiter in Aquarius is like really expanding the mercurial exacting behavior of Scorpio. Yeah, that could get quite intense too, I think. Jupiter doesn't tend to do anything that's negative. Jupiter is abundance, but it's that very abundance that can be. So it could also be lots of things going on in the collective as well around this time, especially with that lunar eclipse. Aquarius does rule humanity and the collective. So perhaps the place we want to go in the future with Jupiter and Aquarius here is not jiving so well with Mercury and Scorpio. It's not really, they're not working together too well. But Pluto and Capricorn knows exactly what it wants, and it wants authority, and it wants power, and it wants transformation of authority and power. Beyond that, it's just traveling through the rest of Scorpio without making any more aspects. And it moves very quickly from the 21st through the 25th is when it moves into Sagittarius. Yeah. Again, approximately, depending on your local time. So you can see how this Mercury transit through Scorpio is a big deal. We are absolutely dealing with things that are intense in nature, passionate in nature, perhaps secretive, definitely intuitive. We are absolutely looking at our shadow. We are deciding what we want to share of ourselves and what is ours. How much radical self-worth has Uranus and Taurus been giving to you? I hope a lot. That's what I'm hoping for everyone. That's like what I'm pulling for. And what level of self-mastery, especially for your future self, is Saturn and Jupiter bringing to you? Mercury and Scorpio is going to have to contend with both of those questions. And it may not be about laying down and saying, just walk all over me anymore. I think that's what this Mercury and Scorpio transit's about. It's the realization we can't lay down and let people walk all over us. We can't give so much of ourselves that it depletes us. We have to have a balance there. We have to have self-worth, and we have to know our truth, Jupiter and Aquarius, and we have to understand what our new value system is. The whole world's changed. Uranus and Taurus has done that for us. Square Saturn and Aquarius. Food production, global economy, all of these things are undergoing a rapid change. Workers' rights. Shout out to Warrior Met. I'm in Alabama. We've got people striking here because of the coal mine situation. They're not getting paid what it's worth to work in there. So all of these things are going to come up and be highlighted by this Mercury in Scorpio. And it's going to turn us back inward, turn us back into our deepest desires, what we truly want in our life, what we're truly willing to give or willing to take, the contracts we're willing to make and willing to break. All right, everyone. That does it for my first messages from Mercury. I hope that it was enlightening or helpful. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. And I'll be back around November 24th, 25th for Mercury in Sagittarius. We will have a Mercury cazimi in Sagittarius, meaning Mercury will meet up with the sun and form a superior conjunction. So we have that to look forward to. Best wishes to you all through this Mercury in Scorpio leading up to the lunar eclipse, and I'll see you soon.